Hello academicians, here is with you Dr. T.K. Basantia from National Resource Center for Education and School of Education, Central University of South Bihar, Gaya, Bihar. Friends, let us continue the part B of the session on context specific pedagogy, which is the 6th session of the topic subject specific and context specific pedagogy. In this part, we will discuss last 4 educational contexts, that is 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th point in continuation to the first 5 educational contexts which were discussed in part A. Now we will discuss 6th one. 6th one is local, national and global context. Truly speaking, education has a broad framework of development. It is not limited within a locality or a region or a nation. A child must have to understand the events, happenings, lifestyle and changes and development in different sectors including social and geographical sectors beyond his or her locality, which includes his or her nation and the world at large. Because of the development of science and technology, not only this earth but the whole universe is under our exploration and inquiry. A child who is sitting in the remotest part of a country should also be given chance to have basic knowledge and understanding about the universe. Local context may be used as a base or starting point of gaining knowledge, but it must not be end point of the knowledge. One becomes like a frog in a well or remains inside a box if he or she is limited within his or her locality. Nowadays, innovations, discoveries and inventions made in one area are also used in many other areas for achieving a holistic perspective of development among different areas. Nowadays, mobility of an individual is not limited within his or her locality. Further, an individual is not the member of his or her locality only, but he or she is a bona fide member of his or her nation and the world as well. For achieving self-identity as a member of one's locality, nation and the world, one must have to understand his or her local and national context as well as the global context through the teaching learning. The pedagogy of learning tasks used in a school must include instances, success stories, innovative practices, etc. from the local level to global level to make the teaching learning broader and innovative. There must be proper linking between local values, national values and international values in pedagogic process in any subject or area of knowledge. At the school level, the subjects like social sciences are predominantly locality based and nation specific in nature, but the subject like science and mathematics are predominantly universal in nature. When pedagogy is used in a subject context, it must interact with the nature of the subject well. For example, caste system as an area of study of social sciences is very much unique to Indian context, but number system as a tool of mathematics and theory of relativity as a law of science have universal base. Pedagogical system of a subject has to consider the nature, context and applicability area of the subject. Achieving local, national and global unit shall be one of the general aims of pedagogy and pedagogical process of any subject or area of learning. 7th one is culture and language context. Really, the sentiment of a learner is attached with the culture in which he or she lives and the language that he or she uses. The culture and language of the child are two directions of the same entity and those interact with each other in such a way that one can't exist without the other. While culture connotes way of living, language connotes way of expressing. The tradition, belief, custom, morality, art, value system, etc. that learner learns from his or her social surrounding are the part of the culture of the learner. The sound, symbol, etc. that a child uses to communicate with others become the part of the language of the child. As teaching learning is an act of social influence and both culture and language are important aspects of society or social system, so both culture and language strongly influence teaching learning process. In pedagogical process, culture plays varied roles. It is a medium of pedagogy, tool of pedagogy, pedagogic aid and many more. There exist different dichotomy of culture like mainstream culture versus subsidiary culture, intra-culture versus inter-culture, homogeneous culture versus heterogeneous culture, monogroup culture versus plurality culture, monolingual culture versus multilingual culture, and so on. Our concern here is not to divide culture or make dichotomy in culture, but our concern is to know where the child gets space in this kind of dichotomy and considers that space in curriculum design and pedagogy. If we design our teaching learning process as per the cultural experience and expertise of the learner will feel secure and pay attention in learning. He or she cannot differentiate much between school culture and culture of his or her family and society. When day-to-day cultural events and activities of the child are reflected in school practices, the child learns better. So, there should not be too much difference between institutional or school culture and family or community culture of a child. For example, the festival like Onam may get a space in schools of Kerala. Kalbelia dance may get a space in schools of Rajasthan. Bihu dance may get a space in schools of Assam, and the festival Chhath may get a space in schools of Bihar and Jharkhand region for the purpose of teaching learning and many other purposes. Community experience and culture mediated learning becomes asset for teaching learning process of any educational institution. That is why in our educational context, especially in primary education context, we expect that the teacher must be from the culture of the child, because a teacher who is from the culture of the child will understand the teaching learning issues or problems of the child well, and the teaching learning becomes better. If the teacher is not from the culture of the child, he or she should try to understand culture of the child or try to be literate about the culture of the child for the better learning of the child. Culture mediated learning does not mean that the entire learning shall be limited within the culture of the child. Rather, it refers to extend the learning periphery beyond the culture of the child, but the culture of the child shall be used as one of the prime tools of learning. Now, let us discuss some important issues of pedagogy relating to the language context of the child. If the child belongs to multilingual culture, so definitely the pedagogy that touches the child must be multilingual or must value multilingualism. But now question arises, if the culture of the child is monolingual, what should be the pedagogical focus in such context, monolingualism or multilingualism? In this context, I want to answer in a different way. In such context, pedagogy must focus on multilingualism to a considerable extent, since multilingualism is considered as a universal value, especially in present time across the world. The three language formula as advocated by the Education Commission 1964-66 seems to be a justified step for promoting multilingual education in India. When mother tongue or regional language that a child knows well or any other language that a child knows well is used as a medium of learning, the learning becomes effective. If any language that can be used as a medium in educational context, the learners of the educational context must have a grip over the language, and the educational context must facilitate that. Therefore, in educational system, the whole pedagogy or pedagogical process needs to be designed in such a manner that it must cater the language demand of the learners. Eighth one is theoretical and practical context of learning. Considering the process aspect of learning or involvement of learner in learning, Learning may thematically be divided as theoretical learning in one end and practical learning in another end. While theoretical learning is more cognition based, the practical learning is more skill based or performance based. Each subject or field of knowledge has some theoretical aspect and some practical aspect. But these two aspects of a subject differ in their degree and nature. For example, if we compare the theoretical aspect and practical aspect of social sciences with the theoretical aspect and practical aspect of science, we may find that science is more practical oriented in comparison to social sciences, or in other words we can say social sciences are more theory oriented in comparison to science. At the school level, the subjects like science, art education, health and physical education and work education normally have a great deal of practical work in comparison to the subjects like mathematics, social sciences and languages. Both theoretical aspect and practical aspect of a subject go hand in hand, and both are important aspect of learning of a particular subject. In case of any subject, a theory without practice is incomplete and a practical without theory is meaningless. Perfection in a subject requires mastery over both theoretical component of the subject in one direction and practical component of the subject in another direction. For a holistic development relating to a particular subject, learning of both theoretical aspect and practical aspect of the subject are required. But the teaching, learning or pedagogic process of both these aspects of a particular subject requires somewhat distinct attention. Let us see in detail the difference between theoretical learning pedagogy and practical learning pedagogy. The theoretical learning pedagogy is concerned with understanding learning context as a whole. The practical learning pedagogy is concerned with understanding specific part of a learning context. The theoretical learning pedagogy is concerned with general domains of a subject. The practical learning pedagogy is concerned with solving specific problems of a subject. The theoretical learning pedagogy is concerned with the question, why does an issue happen? The practical learning pedagogy is concerned with the question, what is the process of an issue? The theoretical learning pedagogy is based on an idea or ideology of a subject. The practical learning pedagogy is based on ground reality of a subject. The theoretical learning pedagogy is based on learning through knowing. The practical learning pedagogy is based on learning through doing or practice. The theoretical learning pedagogy is more abstract in nature. The practical learning pedagogy is more concrete in nature. The theoretical learning pedagogy is based on the method or technique or means like reading test materials, deliberation, discussion, etc. The practical learning pedagogy is based on the techniques or methods like involvement in practical or real field work, participating in laboratory work, involving in internship in a project, etc. The theoretical learning pedagogy creates base for application of a subject. The practical learning pedagogy emphasizes on application of what is studied. The theoretical learning pedagogy facilitates overall idea of a subject including its origin and philosophy. The practical learning pedagogy promotes deeper understanding of issue of a subject. Therefore, while dealing with theoretical and practical learning contexts, their respective pedagogical principles must be focused and considered. Now, we will move towards the last point, that is time context. Time context of an educational system affects in different ways in pedagogical process. In the process of using a particular pedagogical technique or strategy in a particular lesson, two important points in respect of time are decided. One is time available or to be spent for a particular lesson, and another is the pedagogical technique which will be used will take normally how much time for its implementation in that particular lesson. So, allotted time of a lesson has an interactive role with the time required for the pedagogic implementation of the same lesson. Further, the use of pedagogical strategy should not be stereotyped. It should not be too lengthy or too short. It should be dynamic and should be as per the need and context of teaching learning. Further, time is dependent on interest level of the learner. How much time that a child can concentrate at a time in a particular class of teaching learning also matters in pedagogic process. Learners need a kind of relaxation within a class if the class lingers for more time. Further, concentration in learning among students of different classes is not same. In lower classes like early primary classes, since the concentration of children is less in comparison to the children of higher classes, so in lower class level a frequent break or gap or relaxation may be needed between classes or among classes, or classes may not continue for longer period of time, or humor or enjoying situation may be added on different points of time during the class. It is observed that in early part of the day or in forenoon session, children remain mentally more fresh than the later part of the day or afternoon session. The learning of the subjects which need more teacher assistance like mathematics, science, etc. require more mental freshness of the children in respect of their learning. So, these subjects may be considered for teaching learning in forenoon session of a day. The subjects like art education, health and physical education, work education and even social sciences to a little extent may be considered for the teaching learning in afternoon session of a day, since these subjects require less teacher assistance in comparison to mathematics and science. Another important time related issue is timing of theory class and timing of practical class. The practical class like laboratory work, project work, craft work, etc. may require at a stretch more time in comparison to the classes like lecture or demonstration. So, while deciding time context for pedagogy relating to practical class and pedagogy relating to theory class, more time per class or session may be devoted to pedagogy relating to practical class in comparison to pedagogy relating to theory class. The philosophy, principle and uses of pedagogy are always time dependent in nature. To conclude, I want to mention that pedagogy is always context dependent in its theory and practice. The context may be subject context or any other context ranging from stage of education and type of learners to the time of learning. Fitting the right pedagogy in the right context is the important goal of context specific pedagogy. If pedagogy is used without understanding the context, then it may become static, monotonous and mechanical and may do little for its purposes. Unless knowledge is based on appropriate context or realized as per its context, knowledge remains as information which is of no value and which simply would encourage rote learning and become instrument for bringing haphazard change in personality of the learner. Hence, we must understand pedagogy well and use the same in appropriate manner in different educational context. Friends, at the end, I want to mention that our discussion on the topic subject specific and context specific pedagogy in all the 6 sessions may help you, though not fully, but a little extent to create a new discourse in the domain of pedagogy. Thank you very much indeed for your affiliation with me in this platform. I expect this kind of affiliation with you in future academic endeavor. Okay friends, goodbye, thanks.